Thanks, Bud. Over to Ray Carpenter, the Acting Director of the Army Guard.
Hey, sir, thanks. First of all, it's my privilege and honor to be here and serving in this capacity. But I want to thank you for your service out there. And Admiral Mullen talked a little bit about it earlier, but we just hope that the service of this country that they provide you via what we're talking about here in family programs equals the service that you and your loved one provide in terms of support to this great nation and the citizens of the various states, territories, and district. For us in the Army National Guard, people are our #1 priority. And taking care of people is absolutely part of that process to make sure that we keep our commitment for what we have committed to in terms of the deployments, the mobilizations, and what we're responsible for on the back end of that and during the deployments. I think that as you look at what's going on in the Army National Guard, it is a tremendous story. Everybody inside the Army National Guard has either re-enlisted or has volunteered to be part of the Army National Guard since 9/11. And we are now at an end strength of 363,078 people against a required end strength of 358,200. That's a pretty important data point. If you've paid much attention to the news releases as of late, what they have called out is that the Army National Guard has not met their accessions or recruiting requirement. The reason why we haven't met our recruiting requirement is because there's no room. We have no room to recruit people into the Army National Guard at this point because of the end strength that we have right now. We have more people staying inside the National Guard, inside the Army National Guard, than what we had planned for. And so our recruiting is targeted at a lesser amount than what was originally projected. And I'd tell you, my take on that is that if you're in the National Guard and you're not happy with being in the National Guard, you're probably going to get out. You're probably not even going to stay for your 6 years. If you're in the National Guard and you're kind of happy with what's going on, you'll probably stay for your 6 years, and then you'll get out. If you are really thrilled about what you are experiencing in the National Guard, you will not only stay, you will recruit people into the National Guard via GRAP, your relatives, your friends, because you want to share the experience that you've got out there. And I tell you, that's exactly what's happening inside the Army National Guard right now. We are 9 years into 2 wars, and we have an excess, if you will, of end strength above what we're supposed to be. That's a great story about the Army National Guard. That's a great story about you. It's a great story about the soldiers we have inside the Army Guard. And I would tell you that the relationship that you have with the units, the relationship that you have with the soldiers is more than just a family support group or a volunteer group supporting a deployment. It is a partnership. For as much as the service member took an oath and signed up to serve this country, many of you in this room might as well have signed the same oath, because you are just as committed and you are just as tied to that deployment and the service of that soldier. And that's pretty darned important. And that's where we've come from in the last 8 years. 8 years ago, I don't think that we looked at family support and the relationship that we have with all of you out there in the same light. And the relationship has matured over the last 8 years, and I think that's absolutely a great news story. I was down here visiting Grand Isle in Louisiana about a month ago, and I had the opportunity to go out and look at the soldiers from Louisiana that were working on the oil spill, 1022nd Engineer Company. And they're down there, they're working 16-hour days. And I talked to 30-some soldiers down there, and not one of them was disappointed in what was going on. They had been there since the middle of May, and they expected they were going to be there for quite some time, because the word that they told me was that it was going to be 55 days after the oil well was capped before the oil stopped coming ashore. And so they're going to be down there a while. I was down there when they got the notification that they were going to be mobilized, and their next tour of duty was going to be in Iraq. And they were up for that. They were thrilled about that. I ran into two soldiers named Hudson. And one was an older guy and the other was a younger guy. And it turns out it was a father and son combination. The father was a second lieutenant. But 6 months prior to that, he had been an E4. They were both E4s. And so I said, okay, so what's the story here? I mean, what are you doing as a 39-year-old soldier as a second lieutenant? How come you joined the Guard so late? And he said, well, I joined when I was 34. And I said, so what happened? He said, well, my wife finally let me join the National Guard. So I turned to his son and I looked at him and asked him what his story was. And he said, my dad G-rapped me. What I walked away from that day was the story about the family, the Guard family. And it's true inside this room. It's true inside of the unit, the 1022nd Engineer Company down there on Grand Isle. It's true, sir, in the units that you saw overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, the great soldiers and airmen that are doing great things, excuse me, for our country. And I look at, again, that service is a gift to this nation. And as far as I'm concerned, the least this nation can do is acknowledge, appreciate, and give back for the service that's being provided, the support that's being provided. So to all of you, I want to thank you for your service. Look forward to your questions. I'll take the easy questions, and we'll turn the rest to somebody else.
You know, I always listen to Ray because Ray is one of the few panelists here, and I don't know, there's probably others in the audience who actually fought in a different war, and it was called Vietnam. And I think you've seen some stark differences with how the soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines are treated now than that war that you came home from a long time ago. So.
Yes, sir. You know, as much as we struggle with this discussion about what we're calling PTS now instead of PTSD, because we've now come to the realization that post-traumatic stress is not a disorder. It is a disease. It is a condition that we are going to have to deal with. And I think that's a great story in terms of just what's happened since World War II, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and now what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I'd like to address one other issue as long as you brought it up, sir, and that's the suicide rate that we're experiencing inside the Army National Guard. We have 63 suicides now in July, or actually the 2nd of August of 2010. Last year, in all of 2009, we had 59 suicides. So we are experiencing 2 suicides a day. I get these SIRs, these serious incident reports on my BlackBerry, and it's a notification of anything from, you know, a serious incident or a death. And the BlackBerry comes up with from the Army National Guard Watch, SIR death of a guardsman. And it goes on and it gives the state, it describes the incident as a death of a guardsman, describes the date, 26 July, the location in the state, the source of the information which comes from the state, the name of the soldier, the rank, in this case it's a private, race is white, sex is male, age is 19, position is a 92 Yankee, security clearance unknown, unit of assignment and station, HHC, it's an infantry battalion, and it gives the state summary of incident. Private Wenzel, his private body was discovered on 26 July in the apartment of another soldier.